Right, okay, so here we are with our Aspect 5. So, first of all, if you do ever need to clean the glass, which occasionally you'll have to, get a damp cloth or a wet wipe or something, wipe it on the glass, dab it in the ash first. The ash acts like a gentle abrasive, and then that just lifts anything off the glass there, which is all nice and clean. Give it a clean cloth afterwards, or a bit of kitchen roll or something, and then that just brings the glass up perfectly. And give it a bit of a wipe there. Right, so to get the fire going, we need fire lighters, a good handful of kindling. Very often people don't put enough kindling on the fire to get it going initially. We need a good handful, mainly because we need to get the flue hot before we get the stove hot. So we need to force some really hot fire into the flue to get the flue nice and warm. That's what generates a draw. We need a control fully open. Now, as you'll see here, we've got some small pieces of wood and a slightly larger one, larger still, and then a nice big one. And as you'll probably gather, we need to build it up nice and gradually. So what we do is we put a good handful of kindling in. As a rule, what I do is I make a little crisscross formation like so, like a little Jenga tower. This allows the air to circulate around the kindling and it gets the fire burning really quickly. The crucial thing really is we need to get the fire as hot as we can, as quick as we can. And we light a match. These natural fire lighters, if you just Google natural fire lighters, you can get them off Amazon or eBay or whatever. These are the most cost-effective option, and they're environmentally they're very good as well, because they're just a byproduct. They burn nice and cleanly. So I light it first, as you can see, and then drop it inside. And I'm just going to close the tower up with the last little bits of kindling here. And I'm going to close the door. But as you'll see here, I'm not going to close the door fully. I'm just going to leave it on the latch. The control here is fully open. In the fully open position, this allows air to get into the stove from the top and the bottom. So it's getting air in like this. As we push the control in, which is later on, that will restrict the air to just come in past this little metal bar, which keeps the glass clean. What we never ever do is shut that right down, because when you shut the stove right down, you're going to essentially make the glass go dirty, and you will also create smoke, which is not good. We do not want to send smoke up into the chimney. Other than that, you can really adjust the control as you see fit, but I would generally keep the control between halfway and 3/4 of the way open. But as you'll see at the moment, we've got the handle, it's not completely shut. Now if I close the door now, you'll generally find that you get condensation building up on the glass initially, because it's a hot fire in contact with a cold surface. So the condensation that you tend to see, I don't know, you can't see it on the camera, but you can just see, I can see here just a little bit of condensation building up. Now over the course of time, if you allow that condensation to happen, it will mark the glass and you won't be able to get it off. It will kind of become acid etched onto the glass. So just good practice, just while the stove's just warming up for the first initial 2 or 3 minutes, just leave the door slightly ajar, and obviously during that period don't leave it unattended. So as the kindling's also started to get going as well, with the door slightly ajar, it really gives a load of air into the fire to get the fire going. So during this point here, I'll just talk about how to keep the stove clean itself. The main thing to remember is never ever put water on the stove. If you've got your wet wipe here, that you get a little mark on it or a bit of dust on it, just give it a wipe down, but always dry the stove off afterwards. Never leave water standing on the stove. It can cause rust or flaking paint. And in regards to the rest of the maintenance, over the course of the time that you have the stove, just give the hinges a little bit of a spray with some oil or some 3-in-1 oil, and the same with the hinge here on the door catch. Just allows it just to all move freely. Never throw the logs inside. As you'll see inside the stove here, you've got these fireproof bricks inside here. These fire bricks, they do invariably generate the odd crack or something, but there's nothing to worry about. It's just literally the insulation inside of the stove that keeps the inside of the stove really hot. Once you clean the stove out completely, you may find that you might get a crack in the bottom brick. It's completely fine and it's perfectly okay to get a crack in it. If you do find that the bricks start to break down and start to sort of disintegrate, then they need to be replaced. But bear in mind that the bricks aren't covered by the manufacturer's guarantee, so do be careful with them. And the main thing to remember is when you are adding wood to it, which we're going to do in a second, make sure you don't throw it in, just place it in the stove and just take good care of it. So I'm going to close the door now, because as you see, it's getting going. We've got maximum air going in, but we've closed the door, so it'd be perfectly safe to leave the stove unattended. But essentially, in maybe 2 or 3 minutes, as you'll see, I've got a very small piece of wood here. As you get your logs delivered, you might need to get some wood split. Just get yourself to Screwfix or Toolstation or wherever. Just get a little hand axe and just split some wood, which I've just done outside here. And that's essentially, that is just one log that I've split into 4. And the most important thing to remember is you start the stove off with small pieces of wood. It's very important to build the log size up gradually. So I'm going to open the door now, and this is another very important point to notice. You've got a very big stove with a very big window and a very small flue. So predictably, when you open the door, you get smoke back in the room. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the door, let the fire catch up just for a second or so, and then we can safely open the door. So never ever just open the door all in one go. If you think about your oven at home and the fact that when you open your oven door when it's really hot, you get a big surge of heat coming out, it's exactly the same principle, but with this version you also get smoke as well, and we don't want that. So always make sure that when you open the door with a crack first, let the fire catch up, and then open the door, nice and safe. As you'll see now, I've added the small pieces of wood to it, the small split logs, just crisscrossed again, so it enables a lot of air to circulate around the stove, around the wood rather, and we leave that for a good 5 or 10 minutes and come back very shortly. At that point, when we come back, we'll be adding something slightly larger to it, and really at that point, once the stove's up to a nice high temperature and you've got some really good heat coming out of it, that's really when we can start to regulate the air temperature on the stove. If I just give you a quick demonstration now as to the control on the stove, as I push that right in like so, you can see the flames almost die down instantaneously, and again pulling it back out there, so you can see the really good responsive flames on there, which is a sign of a really good stove. So that's pretty much how it goes. The ash in the bottom of the stove, just let the ash build up naturally. Don't be cleaning it out until the ash starts to become a bit of a pain when you open the door and the ash starts to spill out, or indeed there's some holes right at the back of the fire bricks at the back there. That enables air to come into the stove when you've got it in the boost setting. Don't let the ash build up past those holes, or it'll be a lot harder for you to light the stove. But never clean the stove out completely. Just leave a little film of ash in the bottom, usually about 25-30 mils, something like that, and then that will mean it will work really nicely. As you can see, it's blaring away beautifully now, and obviously as I see fit to just control it a little bit, I can turn the stove down about halfway, and that will give you a really nice flame picture. And as we start to add more wood to it, that'll be ideal. Never really put more than 2 logs on at a time. A lot of people say how many logs can I get on it. It doesn't work like that. Just keep it running at this sort of temperature, and just keep adding logs as your fuel starts to die down. And don't load too much wood in it, because the crucial thing is what we don't want to do is we don't want to overfire the stove. We don't want to get the stove too hot. I'm not sure if this is working, but basically what we don't want to do is have this. These are a good idea, the flue pipe thermometers. If you don't get it over to this hot section here, we want to try and keep it in this little white zone here. So the optimum temperature really is about 250 degrees C. Any more than that and you start to lose a lot more heat up the chimney, and it puts a lot more pressure on the stove and the fire bricks and things. You might experience issues with the fire bricks cracking. The most important thing to remember is when you first use the stove and it's never been lit before, don't go any more than this. Have a small fire, just kindling for the first couple of fires, and then on the third fire you can start to add some fuel to it and really start to build up some temperature inside there. But basically make sure that you have a couple of small fires initially, and that is about it, I think. Well, thanks very much.